everyone, it's Fran of Cotton and Joy, and I am here today with my newest pattern called Peach Street. You can see it here behind me, and today I am going to show you how to do a block for the Peach Street quilt. So as you can see here, I have all of the pieces needed for a single block of the Peach Street pattern. I have my background pieces, the center, the stem, and then of course the peaches and the leaf. The pattern comes with these paper templates that you can use to cut your pieces. There's template A, B, and C. Or you can use my acrylic templates that I've designed with Riley Blake Designs. Here you can see them, and they match template A, B, and C. So if you have the modern curve templates, you can also use these. And these are what I'm going to use to cut my pieces. So the very first thing I'm going to do is cut the peaches. And as you can see here, there's two pieces for each color because each half of the peaches uses two template A pieces. So I am going to cut those really quick. And then I am going to cut template B as well, which is the leaf. And then I am going to cut the template C pieces, and there's 3 pieces of fabric here. So I'm going to be cutting 3 at a time. And now that I've cut those, it is time to sew. So now that all the pieces are cut, the very first thing I'm going to do is sew the quarter circle pieces, or I guess what you call the peaches. And the very first thing that you do in order to sew these pieces is you take your quarter circle here, or your template A piece, and you fold it in half, you meet the straight edges here, and then you crease the center. And you're going to do that with all 4 of these pieces. And then you're also going to be creasing your template C pieces, and I need 4 of them. And these you put together like so. You put that together, and then you crease here the center. So once you've creased those, what you're going to do is place the pieces like so. You're going to be matching the creases. And so once you've matched the creases there, you're going to add a pin right there in the middle. And then you can also pin up here. Oops. And you're matching here the corner, and then you're going to do the same thing on the other end. And you'll do this with all of the 4 pieces, and then we're gonna go to our sewing machine and sew this curve. So here I am on my sewing machine, and in order to sew this curve piece, what I'm going to do is put this right there under my pressing foot, and I'm going to sew 2 to 3 stitches. Once those are in, I'll remove the pin, and then what you do is you make sure that this bottom piece is laying flat on your machine, and you kind of pull here at the center. And then with your fingers, you can just adjust the top fabric to make sure that it's all lined up on the edge, and then just sew with your 1/4 inch seam. And once you get to the center pin, right where that crease that we made is, same thing, you'll get right up to the pin, remove it, and then same thing, you'll take this, make sure that this bottom piece is laying down nice and flat, adjust your top fabric, and then sew your 1/4 inch seam. Here towards the end, you might get the fabric wanting to pucker a little bit, and in order to avoid that, what I do is I lift my needle, my foot, adjust, and then continue sewing. And that's how you sew the curve. Now I'm going to do the other 3 that I need for my peaches. And here's my secret. I only ever use the 1 pen. Actually, I don't use all 3. I usually just do the center one and then move it around. You'll see what I mean. So same thing here. And then when I get here, I remove the pen and put it down here at the bottom. So I'm only ever using the 1. So now that these are all sewn, it's time to press them. And the way I like to press them, it's to the side, even though I'm usually a press open kind of girl. And it's just because the fabric just naturally wants to fold this way. So that's how I'm gonna press them. So here you can see I've sewn and pressed my pieces. And the next step is to trim these to 5 inches. And so I'm gonna take my ruler, and the only tricky bit, it's not tricky, but the only part that you have to pay attention to is making sure that you're leaving a 1/4 inch seam allowance, both here at the top left corner and the bottom right corner, because that's off background, because that's when you sew it, that's your seam allowance. So you want to keep that nice curve. And you're gonna do that with all 4 pieces for your peach block. And on this one here, you can see I have a little bit extra here of the orange. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to trim here, making sure I'm leaving that 1/4 inch seam allowance. And then I'm going to rotate and just make sure that my 1/4 circle unit is actually 5 inches. So the next step is now to make our leaf, and this is the orange peel unit. That's what usually called in quilting. It's our leaf, and again, I am going to crease the centers on both edges, and I'm gonna crease here the center. Initially I only need 1, but I'll go ahead and do both. And same thing again, you are going to be matching your creases, pinning, and then once again you would pin here. This bit can be a little bit tricky. You're going to be pinning here so that both of these corners meet right there. Whoops. And same thing down at this end. And I'm going to go ahead and take this to my sewing machine. Okay, so here I am on my sewing machine, and I'm ready to sew my orange peel, also leaf, and this pattern. And the process is essentially the same as with the 1/4 circle units. So couple of stitches here at the beginning, remove that, make sure everything's lining up. So once you get to the center, remove this, adjust your fabric here as needed, And so. I'm once again going to press this to the side like so. So here you can see I've pressed this, and a lot of people want to go ahead and start sewing this piece right away, but you do need to trim at this point. This unit requires a little bit more trimming. So we're gonna trim here, same process. You just line up your 5 inches here and here and make sure that you're leaving a 1/4 inch seam allowance on both ends. And now we can just repeat the same process. So crease, pin, and sew. Okay, so here's my unit. It's been sewn and pressed, and it did get a little wonky. That's okay, because now, last but not least, we're going to trim again. And once again, I'm making sure I'm leaving a 1/4 inch seam allowance both at this corner and this bottom corner here. And if you need to, you can turn this around and just double check that your unit is in fact 5 inches. Had a little bit extra here, but not much. Okay, so the next step is to start sewing the stem. So I'm gonna sew these 2 pieces together first. And then after pressing that open, you're gonna sew this piece to the top, and you just wanna make sure that this piece is on the left. Here's this piece, and I'm gonna lay out my block really quick. But before sewing the whole block together, we need to add the center, basically the pit of your peach. And for that, we are going to use these pieces right here, and we're going to use diagonal seam, stitch and flip, whatever you want to call them. So I'm going to draw a line on each of these pieces going like that, and then I'm going to sew directly on the line. So after you've sewn on the line, we need to trim, and we're going to be trimming a 1/4 inch away from the line, so we have that seam allowance. And then we're going to press these open. Okay, so now that I have everything sewn together and I have my block laid out, I'm going to sew these 2 together, these 2 together, and then these 2 together. And I'm not pinning anything, but you are welcome to pin if you feel more comfortable doing it that way. Okay, and I know that up until now, I haven't shown you me pressing anything, but I did want to show this part. I, for the most part, press open unless it's like curves, and then, you know, we pressing to the side. For this piece, I have found that it's easier to press to the side. It does give you a little bit more bulk here at this seam, but it's not that much more noticeable than if you were pressing open, and it's much easier to just press to the side on this one. And then for the other pieces, I do recommend pressing open so you're avoiding this extra bulk here at the seams. So now the next step is to sew these two together, and then after I've sewn those together and pressed them, sew them to this one. So I'm gonna go do all of that really quick. So for this one, like I said, I'm generally not much of a pinner, but I will sometimes pin this one just to make sure that everything is matching up. So I'll pin here, and then I usually just pin the other end just to make sure that the 1/4 inch seam allowances they are meeting together. And then I don't pin here, I usually just kind of hold it with my finger. So now I'm gonna take this and I'm going to press this open just to avoid all this extra bulk here and here. Okay, and last but not least, we're gonna be sewing the leaf to the top of the peaches, and you just want to make sure that your peach, you have the dark side of the peach and the leaf are going together. And for this part, I do like to pin right here at the center. Just to make sure that nothing is shifting there while sewing. So as you're pressing this, it can be a little tricky right here where you kind of have all these thicker seams. So I do like to just kind of use my fingers to open all of that up, and I do press open. And there we have it. That's how you put together a peach street block. Please let me know if you have any questions in the comments, and you can find this pattern on my website, cottonandjoy.com.